the first part, but they can get on, they can always go back and listen.
Yes, that sounds great. So how we're going to function today is we are asking that everyone can submit questions using the Q&A feature of Zoom. If you go down to the bottom of this screen, there should be a section that says Q&A, and just type in your questions there, and then myself, Kaylee, and Riley will go through and answer questions. First of all, let's start with our introductions though. My name is Caitlin Sukronic, and I am the Membership Director North for the CNSA. Kaylee, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, as I said before, I think, my name's Caitlin Tanky. I'm the Community Health Director. Some of you may know me and Caitlin from the previous social, and Riley as well.
Hi everyone, my name's Riley. I'm the Communications Director for CNSA. And I was also in the last social. I also wanted to add that we will not be answering questions in the chat, so you have to use the Q&A feature.
And all of our message in the whole webinar today will be recorded, and we will be sharing it to everyone who was unable to attend. But yes, so we will not be answering questions from the chat feature, but do be aware that anything you share in the chat, whether that be through a private message or to everyone, will come up in our recording and will come up in our transcript at the end. So please keep everything respectful and professional. Without further ado, I'd also like to welcome our guests that are joining us here today from the BRN. We thank you for taking the time to meet with us and help answer all these questions that nursing students are having. Would you like to go ahead and introduce yourselves and a little bit about who you are?
So I am Loretta Melby, or Lori, also known as. I'm the Acting Executive Officer for the Board of Registered Nursing. Prior to my acting role, I did work closely with Marianne McCarthy as a nursing education consultant for the Board of Registered Nursing.
Hello, everyone. I'm not sure if you can hear me. Hopefully you can. This is Reza Pezhuhesh. I'm the board's legal counsel. So I defer to the subject matter experts, but I wanted to join the call as well to the extent I can add anything or just to be a listener.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. And would you like to give an introduction, Michael? Alrighty, we're also joined by Mr. Michael Jackson, who is the president, I believe. There we go. Would you like to give an introduction?
Hey, sorry about that. I'm here with a group of students today. We are doing a telehealth project for UCSD. So I took a break in order to jump on the call with you. My name is Michael Jackson. I'm the faculty member appointed by the governor. I've been on the board for the last 8 years. I'm an emergency department nurse. I work usually three days one week, 2 days another week. So I'm kind of busy. And we have a significant amount of positive COVID-19 patients in our facility. And we have a screening tent, and we also have a level 1 trauma center, burn unit, you name it, we have it. And UCSD was one of the facilities that maintained its relationship with nursing schools, which we would like to see happen with other facilities. So I appreciate you inviting us here. This shows true leadership for students to be involved in an organization like this. Because you're going to be sitting in me and Loretta's spot in the near future. I know you don't think it right now. One day you're going to show up at work. You're going to be a nurse for only 2 or 3 years. You're going to look to the left, look to the right, and say, hey, somebody called in sick. Guess what? You're the charge nurse tonight. So that's what's going to happen.
That's
Thank you,
exactly what
Michael.
happened with me, Michael.
Exactly. I already know. I'm already preparing them for it.
Well, thank you so much for the
You too.
encouragement
And,
and the
and me,
empowerment.
I feel like nursing students need to be in the clinical setting to experience this firsthand, because you're going to take over from the nurses that are going to retire and going to leave the profession. If you're not there, how are you going to learn how to manage when the next pandemic happens? Because there's going to be another one. Unfortunately, this is what we train for. But there's going to be another one, and you need to know what to do.
Right.
So we are depending on you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and thank you for being here and for empowering us. I think
You
that
empower
we're gonna,
yourselves.
oh, thank you. I think we're gonna go ahead and jump into some of the questions that nursing students are sending in. The first one comes from a student from West Coast University, the Ontario campus. They have been told that they need 34 hours of volunteer hours to fulfill their clinical hours. Since they are in the middle of a pandemic, they're wondering if you have any advice on how to fulfill these hours, as no hospital, clinic, or community site is accepting nursing students or volunteers. West Coast University has been telling them to fulfill their hours with the food bank or animal shelter volunteering. Does this count?
So I actually responded to an email from a West Coast University student yesterday with very similar questions. One of them is they asked if Swift River was approved for advanced med-surg clinical hours. I will read that response so that you guys can actually hear it as well. And it says, the BRN only has jurisdiction over your direct patient care hours. The waiver now allows direct patient care hours to be at 50% of the total clinical hours for the following content areas. That's mental health, psychiatric nursing, OB, and PEDS. In addition, upon meeting specific criteria, a nursing program can be granted 50% direct patient care hours for courses in med-surg and GERE content. Swift River or any other teaching modality that is not in direct patient care will not meet the requirements for direct patient care. Your academic institution may consider using Swift River or similar for the remaining clinical hours that are not done in direct patient care. This will be determined by the content expert in that specialty area, the instructor approved to oversee the delivery of the content, and your nursing program administration, which is like your director of nursing and your assistant director of nursing. And then Regulation 1427A requires that the clinical setting must be approved by your nursing education consultant, who then reports it to the board. The next question that a West Coast student asked was, are food banks going to suffice for advanced med-surg volunteer hours to supplement our clinical hours? My response to that were clinical hours need to have a pre-licensure nursing RN role focus. These hours need to be designed to meet the clinical and course objectives. The clinical hours need faculty involvement, as the board expects nursing faculty to ensure that the learning experiences chosen provide the student with opportunities to develop the skills necessary to ensure that they will become safe, competent practitioners, and that the content is designed to meet the clinical objectives. The faculty member then completes and conducts the final evaluation of the student to determine if they successfully completed the required coursework. The Board of Registered Nursing does not consider nursing students as unlicensed assistive personnel for the purpose of clinical nursing education. And then again, I referred them back to their clinical objectives for advanced med-surg and to speak to the content expert that's designated for med-surg for further clarification. The next one they asked from West Coast University was, are they authorized to conduct online clinical and online theory courses? So my response to that was, most approved pre-licensure nursing programs across the state have moved to an online format for theory. And then I asked them to kind of just check back with their nursing education consultant to see if they've had the minor curriculum revision. But that clinical components continue to require a 50% in direct patient care. And I referred them back to question 1 with that. Then the last question from the West Coast student that I answered was, if available, will telehealth in a general practice meet the requirements for volunteer hours? And I did say that telehealth may be able to meet the direct patient care clinical hours. Again, all of these experiences need to be approved by the board's NEC because then it's reported to the board. So the specific question in whether or not a food bank is going to meet hours, at quick glance without going in and looking at the in-depth purpose of it, it does not sound to me that a food bank would meet the requirements. However, that is not a decision made by me. That is a decision made with the program director, the content expert, and the assigned nursing education consultant. Because at that point, they would request the clinical objectives for that course. They would then look at what the intent is from the content expert that is employed by West Coast that would say then, would those be met? So it would need a more in-depth review process, and that would ultimately be up to the assigned nursing education director, nursing education consultant, sorry, from the board to make that decision. But just quickly off the top, it does not look like it would easily meet the objectives of an RN role or being able to meet the objectives of the clinical course or even the overall program outcomes.
Thank you. Before we move on, I just want to jump in really quickly. It appears that people are still having some difficulties signing on. I just want to quickly throw out, and this time you can use the chat. Is anyone here someone who was not initially able to sign on, but was subsequently able to sign on?
Kaylee, this is Jeff real quick.
Yes.
I'm not sure what's going on with our Zoom account, but I'm trying to call support to see if we can get this resolved, but we are recording it.
All right, thank you, Jeff.
So we will continue to move forward and make sure that those who are not able to log on will have access to this recording.
Which brings us to our next question, which is, this is from an anonymous student. Will our NCLEX dates be delayed?
So the short answer is yes, but we have some more further information with that. So Pearson VUE is the testing site, is the testing company that sets up the NCLEX. And it is separate from the BRN. It's separate from the NCSBN, which is the National Council of the State Boards of Nursing. So Pearson VUE is the one that offers the testing locations. The last update that I received was yesterday at 11:41 a.m. from them. It said, we are pleased to report that during the week of April 13th, we were able to test 2,414 candidates. The exam has been running smoothly with no reported issues and continues to perform as expected to measure candidates' abilities. For the week of April 20th, 2020, testing will occur at 161 Pearson VUE centers. We remain very optimistic that the number of testing centers will continue to increase until full capacity is reached. We will provide you with an update on the progress of opening all testing centers in the U.S. and Canada during the executive officer's call later this week. We continue to be pleased with how testing has been administered and will continue to monitor the situation to ensure this positive trend continues. So there are locations within California that are open. They are opened limited. So that has been problematic for a lot of our applicants that are requesting initial licensure. What we are letting you guys know is that you guys, when you apply through our Breeze system, you can choose to get an interim permit. And if you choose to apply for the interim permit at the same time that you do the application process, as soon as you receive your authorization to test, your interim permit is active. And currently, an interim permit is active for 6 months or until you take your NCLEX test. When you take the NCLEX test, if you pass, then the interim permit is no longer needed because now you're a licensed RN. If you take the NCLEX test and you fail, then the interim permit is null and void because the NCLEX test has said that you are not a safe practitioner. So at that point, we would require something, you would have to then do your remediation and then you would have to then come back and retest. But the interim permit would be null and void at that point. So that is something that would get you out into practice while you guys wait for Pearson VUE to reopen all of their testing centers. And so that is what we are offering through the BRN to allow that to happen as Pearson comes back online.
Thank you.
Go ahead and
Yeah, does Riley have a
ask
question?
this next question from Katie Day. How involved are you in encouraging hospital sites to allow students back into clinicals?
So the one thing I want to put out there ahead of time is to understand that the Board of Registered Nursing has zero jurisdiction over any licensed healthcare facilities. That oversight is provided through the California Department of Public Health, and that's CDPH. What the board has jurisdiction over are the licensees, which is our RNs, our nurse practitioners, our nurse midwives, and the educational path to get them to the licensee status. So that's our pre-licensure nursing program. So when the hospital sites decided to close to students that had zero influence by us at the BRN, because we have no jurisdiction over them. Additionally, we have no jurisdiction over them opening back up to taking in nursing students or even medical students, anything. We have nothing that can say, hey, you guys need to open up. What we've done in the meantime, though, is Michael Jackson, our board president, he wrote a letter to all of the legislative personnel and let them know also in their districts how many nursing students were enrolled in their districts so that they can reach out to their schools and their districts and ask them to reopen to students. The other thing that we've done is personally make phone calls to students, to healthcare facilities, as well as send out emails letting them know that students can come in, that we support them coming in. I spoke with Children's Hospital LA. They let me know that they were not closing to students, that they would continue their pediatric rotations through them. Michael Jackson just shared with you, he's at UCSD. He made sure with talking to them and providing them information that they were able to make a good choice to keep open to our nursing students. I've reached out to Kaiser, I've reached out to Dignity, I've reached out to Sutter. I have had responses back, but they have not confirmed that they've reopened. They always are letting me know right now, thank you for reaching out to us, giving us the tools to make the decisions. We are in the process of looking at reopening. So that is a promising move, but without the BRN having jurisdiction over them, we cannot kind of order them to open up. The jurisdiction of the hospitals falls under a different different state agency, not ours.
Thank you, Loretta. The next question comes from Samantha Gross, who is seeing that even with the reduction in clinical hours that have been approved by the BRN, herself and others still cannot make up the hours. What are our options in hospital sites if they will no longer let us return, and how can they graduate on time?
So there are quite a few options. One is Scripps Health in San Diego just hired 221 nursing students using the matrix that the board developed that said, hey, if you're in this course, this is a similar role that you can be utilized. So we're starting to see it change. We're starting to see that things are opening back up, and it doesn't necessarily have to be through the traditional clinical rotation route. The other thing that I was on the phone with talking to several people last week were with SNFs, so skilled nursing facilities, and they are asking for help. Tremendous amounts of help are needed. They told me that they've reached out to Health Corps, and our DCA director, Kim Kirschmeyer, that's done the waiver, she is actually approving that to go through Health Corps. And that Health Corps will be deploying students to help in the nursing home situations that are happening right now as well. I reached out to my nursing education consultant to ask for a complete list of alternate sites that schools are using, and I have received a few. They're doing a lot of the COVID screening, the tents and stuff that Michael was talking about. There are alternate hospitals that are being built not built, but set up, and that they're looking into those. But just various different opportunities are out there. We're going to see this change pre-licensure nursing. It is no longer going to be where the primary experiences come from acute care hospital settings. This is something that the board has been promoting in the past, probably the past couple of years, really just kind of encouraging clinical community partnership, going out there and really taking care of the patients where the patients are versus waiting them to go for tertiary care at a hospital setting. And so this is really, I think, going to change the way that nursing academia is delivered, and that students are going to be much more rounded with various different experiences that will meet their clinical objectives, and they will help prepare them for this. And so with the alternate sites, we are gathering a list of that. Once I have a comprehensive list, I will be sending that out to all of the deans and directors so that they kind of know. We do have an alternate pediatric list that we've been using for several years that was in the director's handbook that they have access to. And we're hoping that this is kind of a process going forward that will allow for them to do that. We're really kind of leaving it up to the program directors to kind of share with us the fantastic out-of-the-box brainstorming thinking that they're doing. And then our nursing education consultants are working in collaboration with them to ensure that it's meeting the board's regulations as well as the objectives from the schools. And then that way they're allowed to give the students grades that say that they have met everything of their required curriculum and they can sit for licensure.
Thank you. Again, I'm going to be that annoying person. I want to check in again. Is anyone here someone who is not initially able to join, but has now subsequently been able to join? Yes, wonderful. I'm going to post that right now.
And thank you for being patient with us with these technical difficulties. Again, if you missed some of our discussion that has taken place, this is being recorded and we will share the link with everyone so that you can go back and see what was missed.
Okay, so then I am going to throw out the next question, which is, how do we go about it when the school we go to is not allowing us to go back in the classroom? So just a quick clarification, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but I'm interpreting this as you're not receiving any instruction, or are you able to have online remote instruction? It's all online. Okay. So what is the concern with not being able to go to the classroom? Sorry to keep asking questions. I just want to make sure that we really address what your specific concern is. Clinical hours.
Okay, so clinical hours, again, I'll try to elaborate more on that again. Your clinical hours are determined by your school. So we have a minimum standard in the state of California. It's 1426. It covers curriculum. Within that curriculum, and I'll speak to the semester units just because it's easier for me right now. So semester units, you have to have a minimum of 18 units in theory and 18 units in clinical, and that's the minimum BRN requirement. The quarter breakdown for units is 27. So 27 units in clinical, 27 units in theory. They need to cover OB, PEDS, GERI, mental health, and med-surg. And so those are the 5 nursing content areas. That is in our regulations, and that those are requirements that need to be met for licensure. That is not requirements for graduation. Graduation is completely determined by your academic institutions. So minimum for licensure means if you meet this, then you will apply through the BRN. We can do your authorization to test, make sure everything goes, and then you could sit for NCLEX. So of those minimum requirements right now, you have 50% that has to be in direct patient care. The remaining 50% is whatever your school determines. It does not have to be in person. It does not have to be at your school. I think I might have lost you guys. Are we still there? I'm reconnecting.
We can still hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay, good. So my internet lost me, but at least we're still on the phone, so that's great. So with that, your 50% not in direct patient care hours are completely determined by your school, and they will look at those hours to make sure that it meets their clinical objectives and meets their criteria for successfully completing their course. That then will be evaluated by them completing your clinical evaluation. The clinical evaluation then, then allows them to post a grade, and posting of that grade then allows you to progress through school or graduate. The 50% that are in direct patient care are what we've been previously discussing about using your alternate clinical means, not necessarily in a hospital setting. And so those come through working with your content expert, working with the instructor that oversees that course, working with your director of nursing or assistant director of nursing, and making sure that when they submit those requests to the nursing education consultant, that those alternate sites are able to satisfy the requirements to help you guys become successful. So with that, I'm not sure that I answered the question because I don't know what specifically needed to be done on ground at the campus. Direct patient care hours would not be done that way, but your theory hours could be on campus or can be virtual. Your 50% that are not in direct patient care can be on campus or virtual. We don't have any regulatory stance on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this next question is from an anonymous person. Says that some BSN programs are cutting their class in half for the upcoming fall semester. I'm assuming that's the number of nursing students they're letting in. Is this decision final or still up for change due to changing events and conditions that are surrounding us?
So again, because I'm not sure what that question is, I will answer a couple different ways. The one is that if they're talking about class size, if they're saying that typically their enrollment cycle is to enroll 50 in the fall and they're choosing to only enroll 25 in the fall, that is a decision that's made completely by the academic institution and is not made by the BRN as a directive or even something that we're encouraging. The only discussions that we're having with our deans and directors is that if they're going to enroll the next group of students, that they have the ability to support them. I think with these alternative clinical settings and with really kind of reaching out as we're kind of seeing things change just within this last week where, like Scripps hiring those 221 with Health Corps being asked to release students out to help in the SNFs, that I think it's completely possible that they have a academic year starting again in fall. I don't know that that would be an issue unless they, of course,
I think we might have lost Loretta.
Hang on, she'll probably try to get back in. I'm sure she will.
While we're waiting for her to rejoin, just a friendly reminder to those who may not have been let in due to the technical difficulties that if you have any questions, we're only going to be answering the questions that are submitted to the Q&A, which you can locate at the bottom of your screen, and just type in your question there, and then myself, Kaylee, and Riley will go through and ask them.
And for those who have joined us since the initial technical difficulties at the start of the meeting, I want to say thank you for bearing with us. Thank you for persevering and attempting to rejoin. We do apologize that we had those unexpected difficulties. We've never had a Zoom webinar of this size. So it put a strain on the software. And we, again, just want to reiterate that this is being recorded. It will be made available to anyone who wishes to view it. And we will hopefully be having more sessions in the future, not necessarily with the BRN specifically, but informational sessions about important topics. So stick around. I need to work on my closing, but. While we're waiting for Lori, Michael, would you want to field any questions?
Sure. To the best of my ability. Remember, I'm not the nursing education consultant expert.
That's fine. Here, I have one. If you don't know the answer, then we can save it again. Again, we're just kind of rolling with the punches. This might be one. So this is from someone who is a first semester nursing student at Pasadena City College. Shout out to PCC. I live near there. We are being told that first semester nursing students have been approved to do 100% of their labs and clinical hours via remote education. This does not involve any hands-on practice for our skills. Is this accurate?
I think Marianne McCarthy, she's on the call, if I'm not mistaken. Are you able to answer that for him? Because from what I understand, fundamentals can be 100% simulation.
Correct, and it's not. We tend to use the word simulation for everything that's non-direct patient care. However, what's really in regulation is direct patient care. I'm working directly with a patient, or non-direct patient care, which is any.
Are you guys able to hear me? Did I get back on? This is Lori.
Oh, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay,
and I
great.
believe, Mary Ann, your
And-
microphone might have cut out.
Okay, so I'm not sure if you guys went on to the next question. To continue, I apologize for that.
Oh, it's fine. The question we're currently answering, which Marianne was answering, and then we lost her mic, so technical difficulties abound. But the question we were in the process of answering was a student from PCC, Pasadena City College, excuse me, said that they were told that first semester nursing students have been approved to do 100% remote online simulated experiences, and they wanted to know if this was accurate. Oh,
It is accurate, yes, and it is supported by the BRN in our regulation 1426G2. The specific statement says, with the exception of the first nursing course, that it has to be 75-25, and that was our previous reg before we did the waiver to lift it to 50% for OB, Peds, and psych, and then with specific criteria to grant for MedSurg and Jerry. So the fundamentals course can absolutely be given 100% in a remote or a virtual setting or skills lab, does not require direct patient care.
And I got a clarification on that question. They clarified that the nursing students are not being allowed in the classroom, and therefore there is not simulation.
And that's okay. There's nothing in our reg that actually speaks to simulation. So it can be done in a way that the school decides that it meets the clinical objectives. So you guys have, all the pre-licensure nursing programs have an approved curriculum that is approved by your NEC and ultimately the board. And it's called an EDPP 05 and 06. And those are forms that the school develops and submits to us for approval for curriculum that meets our requirements, but also meets their degree granting requirements and different accrediting agency requirements. So on that, they have a specific amount of units that they allot for each one of these courses. And then our regulatory authority comes in to say, hey, do those hours or units meet our minimum requirements? Do they cover the content areas that we specify in our regulations? Do they cover all the kind of the threads that go through it, where we're talking about health promotion and abuse and gosh, there's leadership. There's multiple different threads that go through that curriculum. And it's all in 1426 if you guys are ever interested in looking at that. Once that is decided, then we go down to the regulatory authority, which is 1426G2, where it tells the breakdown of clinical. And if you can read in that regulatory statement, it only states direct patient care. That's the only part that it addresses. Therefore, the board has zero jurisdiction over the remaining hours that are not direct patient care hours. So with that, it is, again, back to the academic institution to prove that those hours that they're doing that are outside of the direct patient care hours meet the clinical objectives, meet the course objectives, meet your program objectives. And that is typically done by them completing your clinical evaluation. That is stepped from novice to expert, and it goes with you throughout the program. And if you are able to successfully complete that clinical evaluation, then what the school is saying is that you've met those clinical objectives, and that you're able to go to the next course as long as your theory part is met as well. And so there's nothing that says from the board that anything has to be done in simulation. It just has to be done in a way that meets your clinical objectives. Is that helpful or no?
Yes, we're getting positive feedback.
Good.
Thank you, Loretta.
You're welcome.
Our next question is there any extension of time to complete hours for the semester? We have been allowed back into the hospital to fulfill clinical hours, but what happens if we're, say, 12 to 24 hours short by the end of the semester? Is all that effort in vain?
It is not in vain. Thank goodness, right? So there's a couple different ways that can be worked with. And again, this is all done through the assigned nursing education consultant for your program. And each one of the programs have a nursing education consultant. So there's not a single program out there that doesn't have one assigned. So the first thing that we're hearing is a lot of colleges and universities are extending their semesters by a month. And so because the college or university decided to do that, then absolutely we're in 100% support of that. And so that is great. And so those students that are in those programs automatically have that additional month to meet the expectations, which we think is fantastic that the school was being proactive and decided to do that. Again, we understand that not schools are able to do that because some enroll immediately in the summer session, and that causes, a scheduling nightmare for them. So we are absolutely aware of that. We know that not everybody would be able to do that. So that's not something we say has to be done. The other option is to allow the school to work with their nursing education consultant and look at what they actually project would take to allow the students to complete their hours. And this is done in non-COVID times as well. Sometimes students experience some very kind of horrific life events that do not allow them to continue in school for maybe like 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever, but they did not drop the course. And so at that point, the school would normally reach out and say, hey, do we have any ability to do an incomplete or allow them a week or so at the end of the semester to complete the clinical hours? And that's absolutely something that can be done and has been done in the past. But it is a conversation that has to happen with the assigned nursing education consultant and your program director to ask for some of that leniency and get a plan. Because of our regulation that addresses concurrency, we cannot just say, yeah, of course, you can do it whenever, because the whenever does not allow for concurrency. So there is a process that the program can go through to request to have some flexibility with obtaining those hours. So either, so the couple options I covered so far is the one that the school decides to extend their semester by a month, that they can work and allow for a couple weeks to go over into the next semester or quarter, or into a summer semester or something to that. That's something that can be developed through the NEC. The other option is that they take an incomplete in both the theory component and the clinical component. And then when the academic program decides to open back up, then they can complete those hours. There's been a lot of talk about the BRN says we have to redo everything. That is not a stance that the board has put out. We have supported the academic institutions that if they choose to pause their program, that they can pick up when they decide to reopen and continue forward from that point. That the requirement is not to restart everything. The requirement is to maintain concurrency and to maintain the instructional integrity, to meet the regulations that we have in our Nursing Practice Act. But there is nothing that says that if you take an incomplete or if you pause the program, that you have to redo everything. If your academic institution chooses to redo everything, that may be an accrediting agency issue that they're trying to answer to. That is understandable, and we would support that. But that is not something that the BRN is mandating, because that is not in our regulatory authority.
Thank you. And then adding on to that last question, Katie Day asked, can the simulation, the 50% clinical accommodation for the spring semester be extended into the summer semester for those who will be continuing into the summer?
So that is a possibility. In the waiver that was granted, I think was one of the bottom sentences of the waiver said that it is for 60 days, but that it can be extended. So that is absolutely a possibility. That is, again, not decided by me. That is decided by our director of the Department of Consumer Affairs, Kim Kirschmeyer. That is how that would take place. And it would be specific dependent upon, my assumption is whether the state of emergency continues or not.
Thank you. Just kind of jumping in, I'm not going to ask a specific question, but just kind of as I'm scrolling through, I'm seeing a lot of questions around the same topic, which is the topic of concurrency, which I know you did just touch on in your previous answer, but just to sort of really hone in and clarify that, what is the current expectation in terms of concurrency, and is that stance likely to change or be adjusted moving forward?
Our board does not support going into a non-concurrent state at all. So the concurrency, as far as I'm aware of, will continue to be a requirement. Our regulation, that is how it is stated, that concurrency is part of the school, the pre-licensure nursing school curriculum. And what concurrency means is that theory and clinical are given together in the same semester or the same quarter. That is how we judge concurrency. If we were to lift the regulation over concurrency, that could end up putting students in danger, patients in danger, because in order to go to a clinical setting without a good theoretical support, you may not be able to be as supported and protected as you guys want to be for that. I have been on the receiving end of several complaint calls from nursing students that I've prior to COVID, where there are times when they have complained that they did not receive the education prior to going into a clinical setting. And of course, that's not something that we want to kind of see happening to you guys, where you guys could be put in a dangerous situation, or that your patients could be put in a dangerous situation. Again, I don't have the end-all be-all say over waivers. If a waiver has been requested to lift concurrency, that is up probably with DCA director. The DCA director and legal will review that, and then we will all hear whether or not it gets approved or not. But I will let you know that our board is not in support of waivering the concurrency requirement.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
I'm also seeing a lot of questions around new grad programs. Basically, they're asking how will the pandemic affect students who are set to graduate in May?
I don't know that I'm sure what that looks like, and it looks like this is kind of going crazy again, so I apologize for that. So I think my question with that is, what part of, so graduation can occur in any point if you guys have met the requirement. So is there a clarifying question so that I can make sure that I'm answering this correctly?
It seems like the biggest concerns are around what I'm seeing, Riley, correct me if I'm wrong, talking about how there's a need for nurses, there's expected to be a great need for nurses around this pandemic, but at the same time, many nursing students, either their graduations are in question or their graduation is not in question, but we've seen, I can speak from personal experience as a senior nursing student, we've seen hospitals go on hiring freezes, suspend their nursing nurse residency programs, or delay indefinitely. Does the BRN have any thoughts on that? Or do you personally have any thoughts on that, I think is what's being sought out here.
So there are a lot of thoughts with that. One, go back to a reminder, is that the BRN has no jurisdiction over the licensed healthcare facilities. So if they choose to do a new grad start or delay a new grad start, that is completely up to them. What I really want to do is just remind you that that although pre-licensure nursing students are incredibly important, and I want you guys all to graduate and all to get out there, but there are also the licensees that are out there right now that have to prepare. So what's happening a lot of times at these hospitals are they're pulling nurses that were employed in the PACU, employed in some kind of ambulatory care setting, maybe in their rehab unit. And those nurses that were maybe med-surg nurses are being pulled up to train. And so, because I'm getting a lot of phone calls from them saying, am I able to take care of a ventilated patient? I've never done this before. Am I able to deliver these drips? I've never done this before. And in our scope of practice, it says that any nurse can deliver any medication through any route as long as they're competent. When you look at our nursing regulations, our scope of practice is based on competency a lot of times. And so if that person is deemed competent, they can, by all means, take care of these critically ill COVID patients that are requiring ventilator support, that are requiring ECMO support, that are requiring multiple drips. And that's something that those nurses, the current licensed nurses, need to train up to do so that they are competent to do that. As they're doing that training, the healthcare facilities may not want to take on a new grad group at that point, because they may be choosing to train up the nurses that they have currently employed to take care of that. But what we do expect to happen is that they will need to backfill those positions that were vacated, and that those positions will need to be filled by maybe a newer nurse or a new grad that can come in and assist in those. And as what we shared earlier, just looking at the Scripps Hospital system, they just hired 221 nursing students. So my assumption is that's probably the role that they're going to be utilizing them in, is to somehow backfill some of those positions that have been their licensed current employed RNs are being trained up to fill and cover other beds. So that's a possibility that's going on. Again, I can't speak 100% for that, but that is what we do think that is occurring. And then because they did the call to action to not have elective procedures, to not have additional volunteer people in the hospitals, that our hospital censuses greatly dropped. I know that Palomar Palmerado Health actually laid off nurses, a lot of nurses, for 3 weeks. They put them on like a furlough for 3 weeks. I know that I was told another hospital laid off a lot of their per diem and registry nurses. I think Michael Jackson can vote for that one. That was UCSD, correct? And so all of that is taking place right now because the hospital census is incredibly low. So even if you guys did have a clinical rotation at the hospital site, you may not actually be able to do much of anything because there's no patients there at this moment. If we've managed as a state to flatten the curve, which I'm really hoping that we did, and we are hearing positive things we did, so this is amazing. We're hoping that we don't see a huge influx of COVID-19 patients. But what we are now predicting, and I talked with the California Hospital Association last week, and this is kind of what we agreed on, is that we have a lot of chronic care patients that have now not been receiving the chronic care that they are used to on a weekly or biweekly or even a every other week basis. And so those high-risk patient population with the chronic issues have been sheltering at home. And so what we're starting to see now are those people needing health care and needing it direly. So, you know, people that have had CHF and, you know, maybe a comorbidity of cancer or something are now having heart attacks. Because they're needing additional services. Michael Jackson told me yesterday he had a patient in that was a stroke patient, but then that patient tested positive for COVID as well. So those are some of the things that we're seeing happening is the people that required chronic conditional care are not receiving it. So our hospitals will start to fill back up, unfortunately. We just have to be patient for this to happen. And then at that point, you guys can absolutely go back in, complete your clinical requirements. BRN is in complete support of that. Again, it's up to our hospital facilities, our healthcare facilities that have to make that decision to let you guys in. And I'm sure they're doing it after weighing in all of the considerations. Are their nurses trained up and set? Do they have PPE to support their nurses? Are we making sure that our patients that we serve are protected and able to do this? And then I'm sure that they will go ahead and let you guys in. But they need to do this in a controlled manner, and I understand that.
All right. Thank you, Loretta. Unfortunately, we are meeting the end of our allotted time. So since there are a lot of unanswered questions, like we have about 200 questions in our Q&A, or 100 questions in our Q&A that are unanswered, where can we recommend nursing students to go if they have any unanswered questions?
Yeah, so I've been receiving a lot of emails on that, and my direction in each one of the emails is to go back and speak with your program director. Your program director is working 100% with the assigned nursing education consultant that is the liaison between the board and themselves, and that they will be able to answer together any questions that you possibly have. I know that I've been receiving a ton of emails as well, and I'm trying to answer them as they come in. I know that our DCA director is receiving emails. My assistant executive officer is receiving emails. I know that each one of our board members are receiving emails as they are forwarding those emails to me as well to make sure that we have a voice that is similar. And so there is a way to get follow-up questions answered and just use those pathways to do that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Loretta, for answering our questions, and as well as Michael and Mary Ann for joining us today. So with that, we're going to have to go ahead and wrap up for the day.
I want to give Michael one chance to kind of say anything because I kind of monopolized the conversation, but I want to give him a chance to talk if you can, just if you've got any closing remarks. Mm-hmm.
Michael, I believe your microphone's
Thank
muted.
you. I just want to thank you for having the BRN here. I'm very impressed with the organization, your student nursing organization. I'm very impressed with it. It's one of the first things to be a great patient advocate is to be able to advocate for yourself first and foremost. And this right here is what you're doing, is advocating for yourself. It's very important. I hope you continue this in your career, is advocating for yourself first, right? And then that way you can take care of others. And it makes you remain healthy too, to take care of yourself. I have a couple friends working back in New York, and they one of them's been on the news, and she's really saying like it's a war zone back in New York. And but nurses don't run away from pandemics. They turn and run right into the storm. That's what we do. I know you don't think you're going to do that right now. I know you think that the world's in utter turmoil right now and chaos, but you're going to be fine. I know you are, because you've made it this far. You know, the bachelor's degree for nursing is considered one of the most difficult in the country, and there you are still doing it. So I don't want to keep you on the line very long. I appreciate you having the BRN on the call, and please continue to attend our meetings and be active and involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael and Loretta. So we're gonna just go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you everyone for being here. If you guys want to become more involved with CNSA, you can visit our website. It's listed here on our slide. Also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at CNSA Official. Again, we're really sorry about the technical issues at the beginning. We're still working on this. We hope that our future webinars run a little more smoothly. This is only our second webinar, but we thank you for your patience and thank you for working with us, and we hope to see you again soon.
And the full recording of this will be made available for any who want to review it, or if you weren't able to be here in the beginning. So,
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate it.
Bye.